Good morning, Vermonters. I am here today with Charlie Zeiss. That's how you say your name?
That is correct.
All right. We are branching out into another direction than I usually go, but it's as is everything in this flower of life. It's related to everything that I've posted before on health and 5G and all of this stuff. So, Charlie, welcome to the show. You are the chair of the Pyramid Science Foundation. Can you give us a little bit of your background and how you got into studying pyramids? And
Well,
I mean, you came from Dartmouth. How does that,
how does that tie it?
yeah,
Well, drinking beer at the fraternity house that was not part of this curriculum, but
no,
uh, yeah, I did go to school in Hanover, so I've been in Vermont and lived up in that part of the world for a long time. In my Wall Street days, I worked a lot with the state of Vermont's housing agency as well. So
okay.
was up in Burlington and Montpelier quite a bit. So,
Yep.
but anyway, how I got involved, quite honestly, I, uh, I, I, because of that background I actually was pretty instrumental in helping to develop the structure for mortgage-backed securities. And in 2008, that for your readers is the product in the financial world that brought the world down then. And so I really had to take a hard look as to what I was doing, and I decided to go do something else. But specifically, David Wilcock about 6 years ago did a 10-part series on Gaia TV called Wisdom Teachings, and that's where he developed in detail the Russian pyramid research, and that's what got me interested. I was a biology major in college. If I hadn't had a bad car accident in Greenfield, Massachusetts, coming up to Dartmouth for the winter semester, I may have been a doctor, but I had to stay out, and it was going to take a fifth year to go to college and to finish up my pre-med stuff. So I went to business school. But it was the science that got me interested in this, and one thing led to another, and so now I'm writing a book on it, and have a lot of interesting research that I'll be at least highlighting today from the book. And I've also turned this into a business. I'm not getting rich on it, and I don't want to, but I want to make an inexpensive meditation and healing pyramid that people can use and actually see some positive results from. So that's kind of it.
That's really a story of our times, as it were. I want to recognize that in terms of, many of us have gone in one direction for a good portion of our lives and recently just, you know, turned around and gone in the other direction when we realized that I'm down to two words, entropy and syntropy.
There you
and
go.
and so one is entropic and the other one is syntropic, and you move directly from one to the other. And what a wow, well
Well,
done.
that's right. That's an interesting analogy because with physics one in college, we learned about entropic doom, and when you listen to Nassim Haramein and Marshall Lefferts talk about the world, uh, they show you that it's really just the opposite. So we have
Right.
to be aware of the fact that, yeah, there are two forces, but the dominant one is the higher vibration that we all need to strive for, and it overpowers the entropy, pretty significantly if we know how to apply it.
Right, right. Well, so your work, you mentioned the Russian scientist, and I want to share the screen. If I can find it, I think this is it. Yes. Just a summary of some of the research. Um, let's see. I'm sorry, I'm a little clumsy at this. So this is from the website, from your website, which I'm going to post all the links in the description at the end of this video.
Okay.
Um, there is, here's a summary of Russian pyramid research by Dr. Alexander Galad. Um, I'll just read what he said. In my opinion, the main problem in the study of pyramids is that many tend to see in the results of the research elements of mysticism, shamanism. However, scientists with intuition already understand that here we are dealing with a new physics and a new biology. So that's really counterintuitive for many scientists to use intuition, and is kind of what we're lacking in this present day lockdown situation, where we're not using our intuition about this. In fact, it's being eschewed and demonized, and whatever other things they're doing to it. So I just want to run through some of the scientific findings. You can do this research yourself, viewers. This is absolutely essential reading, and believe me, it's just the tip of the iceberg. So here we go. Here's some of the health-related results that they looked into. Promoting heightened immunity. I'm not going to read the results and conclusions. You can do that yourselves. It can increase blood platelet count. Let's see. Pyramids placed on the roofs of hospitals for faster healing. It helped effectively in treatment processes. Improves thyroid function and regulation. Reduces stress in laboratory mice, reduces cancer and infectious diseases, improves lymphocyte proliferation and longevity, provides dramatic antiviral effect, reduces tumor growth, reduces infant mortality, improves athletic endurance, drastically improves prisoner behavior. This was interesting to me. Because I know sound and meditation experiments have come up with the same thing, and we're going to be talking about bringing sound into the pyramid here in a bit. Environmental research regenerates extinct species, and it creates new streams. That was an interesting one. I've actually heard of this before, but I hadn't read about it, so I'll be looking into that since I live by a stream right now. Purifies contaminated water. Creates far-reaching energy field. HeartMath Institute has done lots of research on that as well. Diminishes earthquake risk and severe weather. We could be using that about now. Yeah. Dramatically reduces airborne environmental poisoning. Again, we could be using that big time right now. Improves ozone layer. Again. Agricultural research improves the production yield of crops, and wheat 400. Let's see, had a yield of 400% increase. Wow.
Right, that's right. Putting it right in the field. That's right.
Wow. And then keeping razor blades sharp. That was an interesting one. I think that was one of the original studies that I had heard about That's pyramids.
Right.
Yeah. And then changes the electrical resistance of materials. I don't quite understand that, but I think that has to do with harmonics and resonances.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Electrical charges it distributes electrical charges more evenly, that we could be using better to better distribute the plasma discharges on the planet right now. Pyramid water that does not freeze until disturbed. That was interesting. You guys can read about that. And then visible rings formed in rocks scattered inside the pyramid. I'm going to be looking into that because that was curious. Pyramids generating electrical energy. I've seen photographs of, I don't know if they were photoshopped, to be honest with you, but of great energy beams coming out of the top of pyramids.
Yes.
And then increase oil well production. I'm not sure that's a great thing, so I'm skipping that one.
Well, when you can get free energy, which we'll talk about, why do you need oil?
Exactly. All right. So there's a list of more research in other areas, and then applications of technology suggestions. The ones that we're going to be kind of hovering around and continuing to look at today is the problem of protecting the biosphere from all sorts of pathogenic radiation, electromagnetic, acoustic radiation, including from radiation of mobile communications. Billions of mobile phones are capable of disrupting and destroying the human gene pool, and then remediation of nuclear, bacterial, and chemical waste. Not so much, but that all kind of goes in to the same thing. So, Charlie, that's a mouthful, but wow, you have lots of research ahead for you. How are you moving forward on this? And give us a little bit of an overview.
Well, and the reason for setting up the foundation, as you mentioned, the logos, to my left, I guess, on the screen. Uh, the the purpose of this is to try to raise funds, raise awareness, disseminate information about these energy fields, their impacts on health and the environment. So, we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for money. I we I got a fairly significant starter contribution from a good friend who has allowed us to hire a professional grant writing company to begin to do this for us. But we need individual contributions as well. We need participants. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. We're trying to do as much research as we can on our own to document these benefits that were shown in Russia, so that people will realize that this isn't some sort of a communist plot to overtake America or something. That this is real research done by real scientists, and as you said, those are very, very amazing results. And we don't have time to go into great detail on these, but again, with respect to COVID, and that's in the news, obviously. One of the research articles that you mentioned talks of a tenfold increase in the survival rate of mice that were given typhoid fever virus. Those who were sitting or lived inside the pyramid had a 10 times greater survival rate. So, I mean, these are amazing results. And, I decided 2 years ago this was too good not to try to promote it and to get awareness of this information out to the public.
Well, I am so glad you did. It's so timely, and it's interesting because I really don't think um, even the opening for this to be of interest to people would be occurring right now if the last year had not occurred. Because we're desperate to find ways to health has become by necessity our own responsibility, because it's being invaded.
That's right.
It's actually being invaded and taken over by entities outside of ourselves, and without judgment on that, just that alone, giving power to somebody else for something as crucial and innate as your health
Right.
is an anthropic choice.
That's
And
true. Yeah.
yeah, so thank you so much for doing that left turn and introduction to this. So now let's get into some information.
Okay.
We're ready for your slideshow.
All right. Uh, I stayed away because I knew Allison was going to be uh, showing this information. So I'm going to run through some slides. These are from the upcoming book. Uh, the book is going to deal with topics. And Allison, I assume that you can see my screen.
Now you actually need to share it. Go to the share.
Oops. Okay. Forgot that again. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm no good at the share part either. So
Here we go. So we'll
yeah.
start the slideshow here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now can you see it?
Yes. Good.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So just to show you that you'll see this. I found a device which has been invaluable to me in my research because it's called an MB ruler. It's a protractor app that you can attach to your laptop. So that's the way I've been measuring this geometry, and I'll get into how I figured it out in a minute. But the magic number within this is the number I came up with is 76.345 degrees mathematically, and this only goes to 2 digits, so it's as close as it can get. So
So can you use your cursor and show us what the 76.34 is?
yeah, if you see the red dot at the bottom left of the pyramid,
Yep.
uh, all of these are going to be done the same way. This is called a slant angle in pyramid speak, or slope angle. But if you go up from that point to the top of the pyramid, that's the angle uh, between the ground and the slope going up towards the top. So
And is that the 76 from the horizontal?
yeah,
76? Okay. All
yeah.
right. So where
So
the red arc is what you're measuring.
right.
Okay.
So you go from here, you'll see a little blue dot at the very top. It's almost out of the photo.
Yep.
That's the top of the cursor going from the red dot to the blue dot. So it's going
Okay.
along the edge of that
Okay.
pyramid. So this is one of the pyramids in Russia, and that's what I designed it off of. These are the pyramids that I sell on my website, stargatepyramids.com. I've got other sizes, but the most relevant ones for our discussion today, for people who want to meditate, are going to be the small, medium, and large. Uh, Lisa Richards, a colleague of mine and a co-founder of the foundation, she makes custom capstones. If you look at the Black Pyramid, you'll see something sitting on top. So these capstones enhance the energy fields. She is an intuitive, and if you're interested in that, she will do an intuitive consultation with you and customize a capstone. Now, on the bottom right are what are called caduceus coils, and we'll be talking about those later in the context of sound healing later in the program. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of geometry today and math, but I do want to tell you how I came up with this, because the Russians never really disclosed the geometry of these pyramids. We had a rough approximation, but I could never find a sacred geometry or phi relationship in what I call 2 dimensions, the height to base length or something like that. But uh, energy fields move in spirals, and spheres are, uh, you know, theorized to be the basis of creation. So I wondered and came up with this idea from David Wilcock. Actually, he talked about some Russian research that proved that these pyramids were built on phi spirals. So I didn't totally agree that I could come to that conclusion without doing the math myself. And so I did it. And so what I did, I just started with in 2 dimensions, you can take a circle. I started with the diameter of 1. And, to backtrack, phi can be developed in any number of ways through the Fibonacci series, but mathematically, it's 1.6180339, and it goes on forever. It's an infinite irrational number. But when you do that and you put these spheres in a stack, and then you draw a pyramid around it, and you come up with the geometry. That's the way I did it. And what I ended up with was what's called, again, a slant or slope angle of 76.345 degrees. And interestingly enough, people said, well, gee, this looks so different than the Giza pyramid. Is there any relationship? Well, turns out there's a lot of relationships between these. The Giza pyramid is the short one in the, underneath, but I've drawn them with the same base length component. And as you see, if you look at the height of the Giza pyramid to the Russian pyramid, and you look at the ratio there, you're
Oh,
going to
wow.
with 3.236, which is 2 times phi. If you look at the slant height, which is from point C to point F, that's that side piece, well, you get 2.618, which is phi squared. These can't be accidents. And also, the apex angle of the Giza pyramid is exactly the same as the slant angle of the Russian pyramid. So all of this, uh, this is all the stuff that made me decide I got to write a book. And so we'll continue. This, by the way,
Let me interrupt there. Can we go
sure.
back to the last slide that you just? Yeah, that one. Yeah. So I've mentioned to you that I'm reading R.A. Schwaller de Lubitz's book
Yes,
on the Egyptian pyramid or Egyptian temples of Luxor specifically, but he does study Karnak too.
right, right,
Um, so he wrote this book, The Temple of Man,
right.
and so this picture is basically aligns each of those to body parts and functions
Yes,
in the body all the way up to the crown,
that's right.
and as well as in he says this is the temple of Luxor is a an alchemical study of spirit coming into physicality, going back to spirit again. And that's what it describes.
Hmm.
And it's all based, like you said, on this and what you're getting to with this phi ratio. And so I just wanted to make note of that, that's a beautiful kind of description or illustration and connection because I hadn't seen it that way before.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, I didn't put it in, but now that you brought it up, Marshall Lefferts, who works with was Nassim Haramein's
Yep.
president of the board of directors, he wrote a book about a year and a half ago called Cosmometry, Exploring the Holofractal Nature of the Cosmos. And he came up with this not by using phi, PHI, but he came up, did the same thing with what are called Fibonacci ratios. So you end up trending to that very geometry. So it's a perfect match. He found this all through nature, and I'll show some of those examples here as we move forward. So here's one you mentioned. This is an obelisk. Uh, all of those tops have this geometry, which and that follows through from Luxor and Karnak, all of them around the world. Here we're going to see this in Buddhist temples. This is
And the spiral too.
that's right. That's right. And so some of this has free energy aspects, which I'm not going to go into great detail here. The Hindu temples, all of the southern Hindu temples, this is called the Dravidian style, have exactly this geometry as a slope angle. Gothic cathedrals, this is the Cologne Cathedral in Germany. It has this.
And it's
Um,
fractal as well.
that's right, and it's fractal. All of this relates and comes together in geometry. So, um, Dr. Galad, of course, he's in Russia, but the Tartarian Empire, which I talked about, we'll talk about in the book, won't do much today. This is the Kremlin, and it's called St. Basil's Cathedral. This tower has this exact geometry. You'll see this through architecture all throughout Russia and the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, Here again is that Karnak hieroglyph, and I thought I'd compare it. The photo's not very good, but it's the Mayan calendar has this same geometry, same kind of
Wow.
inlet in the bottom. You can't tell me that there wasn't a worldwide civilization or a civilization that had access to going around the world and imparting this information.
And so, go back to that one again.
Sure.
Um, in what Schuwaller de Lubitz found on the Luxor temple was that at the entrance, similar uh, it wasn't as exact as that, but it was measurements and it was in shapes. And what it was the key to the measurements of the rest of the temple. And
Oh, wow.
so on the right, you see those breaks at
Yes.
certain levels.
Hmm.
So in the Temple of Luxor, each one of those corresponds to the knees, the sexual areas, the heart, the throat. It's basically the centers of life that we hold in our body. Not necessarily the chakras, but the fermentation, the places of seed, of movement, of change,
Right.
and they are not just breaks in the stone. They are demarcations of
Oh,
important
cool.
centers of energy. So go ahead. I'm just
Well, that's all right. That's
riffing here.
Schwaller is somebody I haven't tackled yet, but I think I'm going to have to. We'll get to some of his work from one of his proteges, so to speak, here in
Yeah.
a few minutes. But this also, this is just a visual interest. This is from Bagan, Myanmar. Um, Now, if Bagan sounds familiar, this town used to be called Pagan, and there are just a huge number of these types of temples in pagan Myanmar, which of course used to be Burma. Now, if you've heard that word, that's not a surprise. Uh, this is yet another example. This civilization must have known a lot more than I do at this point about all these various geometric angles. But I did find one that did match, and but the word pagan uh, became part of the lexicon in the Middle East. And ultimately, I guess after the Crusades, the Catholic Church picked up this term and turned it into kind of an object of derision or ridicule. So this was actually a beautiful culture with beautiful temples and obviously knowledge of sacred geometry. So
Yeah, and I want to make the connection for myself too um, that harmony and balance that is um, in architecture uh, is if it's sensed as beauty by the viewer,
right,
that there's something eternal and true about it. This is my, just what I've come to is that true beauty has within it the codes of life. And we
right,
might not understand it, but that's the message that we're getting. And it's actually an inspiring thing. It's like, let's go for that.
sure,
Why
sure.
not? Right.
Here's an interesting one here in the United States, the Mormon Temple in Salt Lake City. The founders of Joseph Smith, of course, is originally from Vermont, and I did go visit the Joseph Smith Memorial in college once, but they were all Masons, and they knew of these sacred geometric principles, and all of the spires on the temple in Salt Lake match this geometry as well. So here's one that kind of gets out of architecture, but I think gets us. You'll start to see how pervasive this geometry is in our world. On the left is Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, which he used to make free energy. Same geometry. On the right is, and Allison, I think you can comment on this certainly better than I can, but this is called the Lesser Key of Solomon, and you might want to talk about that for a minute.
Um, so I'm getting an echo. Are you? No.
No,
Okay. All right. Um, in the Temple of Karnak, um, this again, those points that go across are each one of those places of generation of energy and life in the human body. But the other part is that the hieroglyph for and please excuse me if I'm wrong and off on this because I'm sensing it intuitively. I'm not doing numbers. I'm
right.
just starting, but my intuitive recognition of that is that it is the hieroglyphic symbol for life and rebirth and regeneration. And you can see it goes up and then it comes back down again. It also, in a way, it describes the Torah as
Right.
well.
Right.
It gives half the information, and so the spirit has to fill in the rest, which is the polarity, the negative, positive toroidal thing. Um, but I recognize that, and so these are interesting, just basic. Again, it comes back to the geometry, the numbers.
That's right. That's right. And we'll talk about this in a minute. But the ancient study that Plato advocated was called the Quadrivium, which includes numbers, geometry, harmony, and cosmology. And
Right.
I'll tell you, I didn't learn any of this at Dartmouth. I don't care how expensive your education is, you're not going to get this because it's so powerful, I think. And again, it's information that people, don't necessarily want us to be thinking about. But anyway, in the middle is an overlay, which one of my viewers sent me several weeks ago. And so I'm not taking credit for this inspiration. This was somebody else's work, but you can see that even the tower, the shape of the tower and so forth, fits
Yep.
perfectly into the Key of Solomon. Now, here's an even more interesting one. Uh, the Tesla Motors logo, although it's inverted, and that's actually the kind of the upper part of the torus that we'll be talking about. It matches perfectly as well. So fascinating that would be showing up. Now, just to show a few things in nature, I noticed, of course, once you get this geometry in your head, I have to go measure it all the time. So racing sails actually have this geometry as well, which I think is fascinating. You look at light and sound. This is an experiment that someone did a few years ago. They took a pipe and they put a glass sphere in the end of it that perfectly fit inside, and they figured out the refraction of light, and light refracts at exactly this geometry. Megaphones from college cheerleading before they went electronic, they used this geometry because it amplified and clarified the sounds of the cheerleaders. Uh, the dunce cap. This one, I think, deserves a minute of discussion because this is another example of how this information has been suppressed. The dunce cap was invented by a 13th century uh, priest named John Duns Scotus, and he created the concept of a metaphysical God. He was actually contemporary of St. Francis of Assisi, and was really one of the top intellects of the time. But when he came out with this idea of a metaphysical God, it was based, by the way, on the witch hats, which I'm showing, of the time, which of course have the same geometry. And he was wearing one, and that's what gave him the inspiration. He was able to kind of connect with his higher self, and this really does work in real life. You could go to Party City and buy a birthday or hat and put it on, and you'll feel some serious effects if you're sensitive and want to try it. But anyway, the Catholic Church did not like the idea of a metaphysical God and an approach that would kind of keep us from learning that God is within us, not external to us. So they vilified that, and uh, his work as well. But it eventually evolved into an object of derision and ridicule in the educational system. So that's an interesting history on that topic.
And I noticed that in your discussion with Jamie Lee on the Tartarian book that you went through in detail with him, um, that there's a mention of. I actually was looking away, so I missed the beginning of it. But I saw women in fashion wearing hats similar to that, but that had copper wires wound within them.
They seem to, yes, yes. Would be interesting to learn. I haven't delved into that one, but yeah, there were ancient Turkish hats and contours, particularly in the Middle East. That seemed to be the case. So,
Yeah.
more to come there. You can see that there's so many facets. Once you see the geometry, there's so many different places to look for it. But you'll also, after this, I hope your audience will be able to see this automatically when they see this geometry, either in man-made or in natural circumstances.
And the other one is the crowns that royalty wear, monarchy wear,
That's
because
right.
that shape it doesn't do it physically, but it points with
It does
metal.
point up.
Yeah.
Actually, all of the ancient depictions of the Hindu deities, I've got a picture, I didn't put it in, of the three deities. They all have headwear. Buddha had headwear that all had this geometry. Shinto priests wear hats that have this headwear. It's everywhere.
And
So,
and our modern interpretation of Buddha is that he's sitting there without a hat,
right, right. Yeah, yeah.
but
So,
under
oh,
a
who knows?
tree. That's okay.
Yeah. So anyway, now I'm going to talk about some of my. Now that you got the visual, I'm going to talk briefly about some of the research I've been doing. As I decided to write the book last summer, I realized I really needed to spruce up on my knowledge of sacred geometry and the Platonic solids. Well, these are the five Platonic solids that Plato talks about. You've got the tetrahedron, octahedron, hexahedron or cube, icosahedron, and dodecahedron. I won't bore you with all that, but I'm going to show you that these are ancient carvings from and there are a number of these that have been found in northern France, but particularly up in Ireland, Scotland area. People knew about the Platonic solids thousands of years ago, long before Plato, and that's a separate topic, that of cultural appropriation. This information all goes back at least to the Vedas, so who knows, before that time where it came from, but knowledge of this geometry, because it's in the Hindu temples and these forms, goes back for thousands of years.
So can we stick with that for a second? I want
Yeah,
to just share my intuition about what I'm seeing here.
sure.
Is From my sound research, I know that sound creates solids, and
Yes.
that we are remembering that now. We haven't got to the place where um, we're doing what I'm seeing right there, which is certain sounds create a cymatic image
Yes.
that in if it was directed at something that was a liquid would form that shape, and then if it froze or became solid would look like that.
Hmm. Well,
But
this is a critical. That's right. These solids end up being, and I prefer to call them forms. Everyone else calls them solids, but
right,
but these are easily malleable. There are variations called stellations and lots of other
right.
uh, terms, but these are the five basic forms, and these are theorized by Buckminster Fuller and others to progress in a particular fashion, and that this is part of the creative process. Well,
Hmm.
this is what really this next research is why I'm so excited uh, about where this is taking me. First of all, I want to show people these are called microclusters. These are electron microscope drawings, and what it shows is that matter does indeed form into these sacred geometric patterns and forms, and nature does use this as a way of forming energy into matter. So that this is an important slide. If none other, you can see that these forms are used in nature in the creative process. Now we get to back to where you were earlier, Allison, talking about Schwaller de Lubitz. Now, I haven't tackled that book yet, but one of his proteges is a guy named
Robert Lawler.
Robert Lawler, and he wrote a book about 40 years ago called Sacred Geometry, Philosophy, and Practice. And I got that book last year and decided I need to read it. Well, he started talking about, say, the Platonic solids and how they would nest and so forth. Well, on the last page of the book, there's this diagram that you see on the left. And I'm not going to bore you with this, but he didn't give a whole lot of information about this. But my instinct, my intuition is he got this from Schwaller or from, I believe it was his daughter that he studied with to
Lucy
learn
Levy. Yeah.
sacred geometry. Well, back to Nassim Haramein again, you know, I took an intro course that they have on their Resonant Science Foundation website, and Nassim talks about the fact that we are two-dimensionally bound. We use Cartesian like this, two-dimensional figures, and we don't think about things in 3 or 4 dimensions. And so I said, well, I wonder what would happen if I plotted this inside the geometry, because the torus has this geometry at its peak. And so I said, well, let's just try it, just see what would happen. And
Wow.
sure enough, the when I take these 7 circles or spheres in 3 dimensions and I plot them, well, they fit like a glove inside here. Well, now critics will say, oh, but you could put any circles in there and they would fit if just so long as they're getting smaller. And I agree with that. So I do want to show you some information that proves that those circles fit specifically within this geometry. Number one, there are 2 perfect correlations just in the circles themselves, where the midpoint of one in the blue here uh, matches the apex of another. We've got another one where the base fits exactly with the apex of another. But there are also, when you look at the relationships between the apex, the base, and the midpoints, we end up with all, I don't know if I'm there. I don't know if people can see that better now. But anyway,
You can see it.
there are 5 other demonstrated ratios here that come out with the square root of 2, the square root of 3, phi, and the number 2. And those could not happen. It literally is impossible for that to occur unless this diagram was trying to show us that this was a 3-dimensional depiction of the progression of the Platonic forms. So I think this is going to be fascinating stuff. This is just a description of each of those 9 circles and what happens in each of those 9 phases. But to get back to some pictures and applications, you talked about fractals earlier, Allison. This phi cubed scaling is what I'm calling it. It shows up in the Mandelbrot set, which is inherent in the fractals. You'll see this diagram here that these circles, they all grow by phi cubed. And I think that's fascinating in and of itself, and is corroborating what I think is really meant to be a model of the creative process. This is a 12th or 13th century painting called God is the Architect of the Universe. And I saw the compass. I said, well, I got to go measure it. And sure enough, it's perfect. What's interesting too, we think that the Mandelbrot set, knowledge of this information, is contemporary. Mandelbrot himself rediscovered this, I'm going to say, in the 1970s rather than for the first time, because if you look at this photo, that black area sure looks an awful lot similar to the Mandelbrot set. So, were they trying to hide this as perhaps, this ancient depiction of this diagram here did the same thing in 2 dimensions? It's obvious that religious literature and architecture have been used for that purpose over the years. So anyway, as you said before, one of the key things that, Dartmouth was a liberal arts college, I thought, and that's no, I'm not complaining about Dartmouth, but any liberal arts college has totally lost the concept of teaching the quadrivium. So to me, the quadrivium is the ultimate liberal arts. We've shown that numbers can become geometry. We're starting to show now that geometry can become vibration, and vibration here.
Remind us what the quadrivium is again, please.
The quadrivium was an area of study for Plato's advanced students. You first started with I believe it was called the trivium, which included literature and other things. But for his advanced students to really understand the nature of the creative process and the harmony in the universe, he taught the quadrivium, which is numbers or mathematics, geometry, harmonics or harmony, music, and cosmology, which is the creation of the universe, of our world. So, as part of that, we need to understand that in this process, in this creative process that I'm speaking of, once you get to geometry, you can start to, the next step is to take that into harmonics. And I'll be discussing that in a few minutes, but this is a cymatic diagram of the 432 frequency. Uh, Many of the ancient Gothic cathedrals and even current churches and so forth, at the front, you'll see these round diagrams. And researchers, in fact, a researcher in Great Britain has done this kind of research, gone in and with high powered microphones and recorded the resonant frequency of some of these great cathedrals. And sure enough, they match up with the diagrams of stained glass. So you might want to talk a little bit about 432, but this is a common, solfeggio type frequency, and you can talk
Yeah.
about its many manifestations.
Um, so the people that I know about that introduced me to this were Stuart Mitchell, Mark Mitchell, John Reed, Richard Merrick. Um, all I think they were the ones that collaborated on going into Rosslyn Chapel and doing what you described. And then no, so. Um, Reed is the one that did the studies on cymatics, and what they did was they created the sounds within the chapel that were.
Allison, there we go. We
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah, no, you're fine now. It just froze for a minute.
Okay, all
So you
right.
might start again with your explanation of where you were going, because that's
Okay,
kind
sorry.
of a cut up.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
So I had, when I first started studying sound, I was connected via the people that were actually studying cymatics, and Mark Mitchell, Richard Merrick, Stuart Mitchell, uh, Paul Reed, I think was the other. I might be getting that name wrong. They all collaborated, and my friends Stellar Fairborn, who is the singer, went into Rosslyn Chapel to test whether the symbols that they found on the columns that that um, that they
Yes.
recognized as cymatic symbols were actually true, and they came out and verified that. And from that, um, Stuart Mitchell, who has passed since then, who was a musician composer, went further with that and took the numbers of the human chromosomes and put them to music, which you can find that on YouTube. And it's an amazing healing music that he just went straight to the chromosomes and decoded that and then put it to sound.
Hmm.
And so when you're doing that, if you can imagine these images in your cells, you can see the points of light here in each of these, and actually that's where the energy is concentrated. So that it is reminding our bodies, this is what sound healing does, is it reminds our bodies of its original shape, intention,
Hmm.
health, or beingness. So that was a really interesting verification that in this temple that goes back probably to the Tartarian Empire. But this is, you can see these shapes once you start looking in everything. You can actually create these shapes yourself, like in a tub of water. Any of these things, you can verify this yourself, and that was the biggest proof for me of the
That's right.
connection,
Yep.
micro macro.
one of the cathedrals I'll have in the book in Europe has all of these cymatic diagrams on the floor of the cathedral, like I say, in the stained glass windows and so forth. So
Which cathedral is that?
I'm trying to remember, to be honest. I
Okay.
thought
Yeah.
that I can't remember off the top of
Yeah.
my head. I haven't written that part of the book yet, but anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, let me getting back to Richard Merrick, and actually who you mentioned.
Yep.
I'm trying to get information here about from the perspective of harmonics and how geometry becomes harmonics and why this particular geometry is relevant. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but what I did, Plato had an ancient concept called mediation, and the formula is basically, how do you relate three things to each other? A is to B as B is to C. We essentially are B. I mean, we as humanity in our consciousness, we are the connectivity between seen and unseen. And so, what you need to question is, or at least what I'm trying to understand is there a relevance and an importance to the geometry that you start with in terms of a musical octave, which is phi cubed in this case, and its ability to keep these means? As it turns out, I've got in this diagram arithmetic, geometric, and harmonic means. The arithmetic and harmonic means always need to be in sync with each other and actually be inverses of each other. But the most important thing is, again, this is the highlighted one. You can see that the ratio in the last column of the arithmetic mean to the harmonic mean, the only way that you get a consistent phi relationship here is to use uh, an octave, which you use phi scaling, but you also use an octave which has phi cubed. And so I've actually sent this information off to Richard Merrick. I've been trying to get in touch with him for about a year and a half, and quite honestly, I've been so busy. He did contact me just over the weekend. I sent it to him Saturday, and he
Oh,
gave it
good.
to me Sunday night, and I haven't gotten a chance to look at it. So I don't know if he's going to agree or disagree with this, but we're gonna keep researching this, because I know that ultimately you're going to find that this is all knowledge that we're rediscovering, and that's all I
Right.
can say. So
Right.
anyway, as another pointer back to kind of putting this into a holistic gestalt kind of picture, I put this together. The picture on the bottom is again the pyramid with a spiraling energy field going up to the top. That once it reaches the top, it starts to spin faster and faster, and I believe it is actually that 0 point inside the torus where time and space kind of come together. So that I think is a good visual model as to what I think is really going on here, and why I think that we'll be able someday to put together a real geometric model showing that these Platonic forms and are you know are and the energy fields themselves work within this geometry. So now to some practical stuff. 2 weeks ago, I had done some research into EMFs. This is a very tough topic to research with traditional meters. I'm sure, Allison, you understand this. People
Yes.
want. I've done a lot of EMF videos over the years, not just with pyramids, but with other devices as well. And people want. Uh, One of the critical comments I always get is that people want to say, "Well, why aren't you using a traditional EMF meter to show that the EMFs have disappeared?" Well, they don't understand the basics. Life itself is based off of vibration. And if you play a middle C, for example, on the piano, you get overtones, which create frequencies above it, and you also get what are called heterodynes, which make them go away. We don't, and no meter does anything more than to measure the quantity of electronic radiation in various frequencies within a given range. So we don't have frequency specific monitors. I guess we'd have expensive ones, but that concept is really kind of a fallacious one. So what we can do is to measure using some subjective measures, the life force energy that people have when they're around EMFs, and see what happens when you sit inside of a pyramid or other energy enhancing device. And that can be done. I did this in this case with a dowser who uses a dowsing scale called the Bova life force scale. So just to give you a brief summary of that information, outside of the pyramid, I, uh, just as a base case, I didn't have a phone on, and I'll discuss the conditions here in a minute, but my life force was 32,000. And it's all relative here. None of this, don't take anything out of the absolutes here, because this is all just a relative scale.
Can I
But
ask you a question about um, what is the basis of Bovis life force? What are they? Is this
it's an intuitive scale, and
okay?
that's all I can say. Dowsers use this. It's called the Bova scale, and you can use it to measure radiation, to measure life force, to measure any sort of thing. But we were trying to measure what the dowser was doing. Was he was dowsing for life force energy using this Bova scale. And
Hmm.
that's kind of, and we've done lots of tests with him. And so, the common range, some people base case might be as low as 10,000, others might be as high as 50, but mine, okay, was 32,000. But when I turned on a phone I put on a YouTube video, so it was blasting full, nonstop, uh, with those EMF radiation. My life force was literally cut in half to 16,000. But you can see we went through a whole bunch of different scenarios here. One of them, which I think is most telling, you see a billion number there. If you're sitting inside the pyramid with this caduceus coil playing sound frequencies and so forth, my life force went up from 32,000 to a billion. I mean, it's just so this is this is a real, and even without the coil on the caduceus coil, it was 500 million. So the pyramid has this effect of providing this great resonance chamber.
Right.
It amplifies and clarifies, and Richard Merrick's book Interference Theory is the way to explain all this stuff, which I'm not going to go into today, but there are reasons why that's the case. So
Right.
anyway, your life force with onset of 5G and all this stuff is going to be seriously diminished. So you're going to want to do certain things to enhance that. We are looking, and if I can kind of segue into this now, Allison, because I
Yeah.
think this is a good time to talk about it. Um, my significant other, as an example, is a holistic dentist uh, in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area, and she gets a lot of customers who have EMF hypersensitivity. And so, I'm going to try to be doing this with one of them locally, but we're interested in finding people who may have these kinds of sensitivities or any sort of health issue, and we want to put a group together of healers and people who need help to to really start to document these results and see what we can find. But I mean, I know there's a lot of people who suffer from EMF hypersensitivity. A lot of autoimmune diseases, I think, are EMF related. There's, I may have mentioned, 7,000 articles that that demonstrate the correlation between electromagnetic radiation and ill health. So we've got to start looking at ways to solve this. I of course recommend getting rid of your Wi-Fi. There are ways of wiring your house which are very inexpensive with something called power line adapters,
Yep.
which will cut down on that constant bombardment from your Wi-Fi. So there are lots of things you can do, but this seems to improve the energy field, harmonize it, and we want to try to do some scientific research to get into that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. This is my final slide, and I wasn't sure what to make of this. When I was on with last week with Mark, the person who was on with me Michael Pasco, he asked, and I shipped him a pyramid. He left all of his that he had made in Hawaii when he moved to California, but he put this pyramid that I just sent him out on his deck in California. And I don't know what to make of this, but he promises me this is an unretouched photograph. He went out to take some nighttime photos of the pyramid, and this is what he got. So I don't know what that is, but it's pretty profound. And we have had other people make photos showing orbs, inside the pyramid and so forth. But this one was of particular interest. So anyway, that's kind of the end of the slideshow. But hopefully that'll give people some ideas as to the various areas of research that we're working in, and also some of the historical significance. This geometry is everywhere, and it's been hidden from us. So it
Yeah.
definitely has profound importance in our lives, and can help us to improve our personal and collective public health.
Absolutely, and uh, I I don't want to minimize the connection to the Great Reset out of Tartaria, because that is the inversion of all of this knowledge that was present until relatively recently. So it's still present in our environment to recall, to remember, to use. It's inherent in the buildings. There are still great cathedrals where you can go in and harmonize
Yep.
and sing just the tone of 432, and that resonance that you're talking about. Everybody in the building will feel it.
Yep.
Um, and so it would be so easy for us to turn all of our churches into these literal healing centers in New England. We've got these spires. I live down in the Bellows Falls area. There's an ancient canal there. It was built in 1809. It was the first in this country. There's huge structures there that are cathedral oriented, and this is in Vermont.
Yeah.
This
Yes, I know.
exists. It's still visible. Our state house is another good example of that.
That's right.
Um,
So,
and so this knowledge is there. It's actively being suppressed and hidden. But the really great thing is, and I mentioned this before we started, that our current situation is forcing us to take responsibility for our own health, or not. I mean,
right.
that's the choice that we're being given right now. And for me, coming at it from the sound healing perspective, and then this added, it's like almost like the keyhole for, I've got the key, now I've just got need the hole, and that's the pyramid.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that really is, and it's the phi ratio, and I'm getting chills just uh,
so.
starting to get into this. So I really appreciate this. I think we're coming up to over an hour that we've been
Okay.
talking now. And do you want to wrap it up and give people some links, and if you want people to participate, how do they get hold of you?
Okay. Yeah, all of that. First of all, for your viewers, we've got some coupons if you're interested in buying a pyramid or a caduceus coil.
Great.
And I'll send you these links so you don't have to write them down, but because it's going to be a little confusing. Vermonters 10% is the coupon code that we'll be using uh, to order any pyramid. You'll get 10% off. Now, my colleague Lisa Richards, who makes the capstones and so forth, uh, she is doing one, and this is to keep it a little, it's a little confusing, but she's giving 20% off on anything over a $69 order on her website, and that's Vermonters 20, not no
Wow.
percent sign. So that hopefully that'll keep it straight, but we'll send you all of these links.
Okay,
And
great.
finally, if there are healers or people who, you know, have some kind of a condition, if you contact me, I'm not going to give this out over the internet because
Yep, it'll be in the
but
description.
yeah, but I will give you a code for 50% off your purchase of a pyramid if you contact me. And to do that, you can email me at stargatepyramids.com. And we're going to be trying to put together some groups to and try to see if we get some significant healings. We're going to be incorporating sound healings and the like into this process. So I know I mean I can only talk to myself. I lost about, it's not totally due to the pyramid, but I lost about 80 pounds after I started using the pyramid. I think I've become more peaceful. I know that. My significant other will certainly attest to that.
She's not bored with you, Charlie?
Well, he's a lot happier with me now than what I
Yeah.
used to be. So we'll just put it that way. And I had an accident where I broke my left ankle 10 years ago, and I started compensating and my right knee started hurting. As soon as I started sitting under here consistently, for all of you with aches and pain, I don't have them anymore. The only time I notice it, and this is the thing about pain management, is when I'm away from town and my pyramid and I'm gone for 2 or 3 days. Then I think, oh God, look at that. Things are
Yeah.
aching again. So
Yeah.
but it does work. So whatever your issue is, just give me a ring. And I am busy right now. I'm trying to keep up with orders from Mark's show, and I'm sure I'll get some from here too. But I will get back to you. I that's why I'm doing this. I'm not out to make money. I'm trying to get people an relatively inexpensive way to stay healthy and happy. So that's it.
And I want to let people know that I'm going to be participating with you on this. We haven't quite decided the structure, what it's going to look like,
Right.
but I'm very interested in this, and I feel like it is the technology that we all need to understand moving forward as a base, as a foundation. There's plenty of other things that we can add to that,
Absolutely.
but just
Absolutely.
as an energetic level, which is the primary way we exist. It's energy. We're energetic beings. So when we clear that, then everything else can be healthier and harmonize it and resonate it, clear the resonance, harmonize it. So thank you very much, Charlie. I want to have continued conversations as we move through this. This is very exciting. Thank you so much for your time with us today.
Well, thank you, Allison. I really appreciated the chance to be here today and talk to your audience.
Okay. All right, Vermonters. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your day.